Today I'd like to talk about my latest book, which is entitled Data Collecting in Colonial Southeast Asia, 1800 to 1900. This is the third in a trilogy of books where I have been focusing on the period of Western colonial rule in Southeast Asia, notably in the 19th century, from the year 1800 to the year 1900. Now, there have been many studies of colonization in Southeast Asia, and most studies have looked at the political economy of colonization, the technologies that were used, the wars that were fought. My own focus has been in the domain of language, and in particular in the writings that were produced at that time. And in this book, I look at how data collecting was a selective process where data is not something that we simply find, but rather has to be sifted through, has to be selective. And that brings in the question of human agency. What I've done in my works is to look at how the process of the colonization of Southeast Asia did not simply involve the technologies of conquest and warfare, but long before the battles, long before the colonization of the region, came a body of writing and the production of knowledge that framed Southeast Asia as a region that was ripe for colonization and conquest. Now, why is this important? This is important, of course, because this is how power works. One can always analyze power, state power and state violence by looking at the mechanics of power and violence. But long before these tools are brought to bear, and long before political conflict begins, there is often a long process of justification, rationalization, explanation, where justifications are sought for the violence that will come. Now, what's interesting about the books that I've studied in my own work is how these writings that were basically produced by a whole generation of colonialists and imperialists created a kind of echo chamber where colonialists were writing among other colonialists for other colonialists in order to reinforce their own biases and prejudices. And it's from here that all these stereotypes about Southeast Asians as, the lazy native, the savage native, the violent native, this is where it emerges. So the workings of the imperial echo chamber and how that consensus was arrived at through the workings of colonial capitalism has been the main focus of my own research over the past 6.5 years.